What if that sudden, unsettling feeling of dislike for your twin flame isn't a sign you're falling out of love, but the very thing that's preparing you for the real thing? That sharp pang of irritation, that unexpected wave of frustration you've been feeling toward the person you thought was your divine counterpart. It's terrifying, isn't it? Your mind races, whispering that you've made a mistake, that the magic is gone, that perhaps this connection wasn't what you believed it to be. But what if this emotional shift isn't the end of your story, but the most important chapter yet? What if this so-called dislike is not a breakdown, but a profound spiritual breakthrough? This isn't about falling out of love. It's about falling out of alignment with everything love is not. You are not pushing him away. You are being guided toward the most sacred reunion you could ever experience, the one with your own sovereign self. And in that reunion, everything, including the love you share with him, will finally make sense. Let's get real about this feeling that's been unsettling you, that unexpected, uncomfortable wave of irritation, that sharp pang of distaste, even disgust, towards the very person you thought was your divine counterpart. It feels like a betrayal, doesn't it? Of your heart, of the connection, of the beautiful story you believed in. Your mind is probably spinning with fear, whispering that you've made a terrible mistake, that the magic is gone, that you're falling out of love. But what if I told you that this isn't the end of the story? This, right here, is where the real magic begins. This feeling you're calling dislike is not a sign of failure. It is your soul's most sophisticated and powerful defense mechanism coming online. It is your spiritual immune system finally strong enough to identify and reject what does not truly serve your highest good. Think of it like this. Your entire life, you've been absorbing messages from society, from past hurts, from well-meaning but misguided influences about what you should tolerate in the name of love. You've been taught to be patient, to be understanding, to shrink your needs, to quiet your voice, to accept breadcrumbs when your soul was starving for a feast. These patterns became so ingrained they felt like a part of you. Then, your twin flame entered the picture. In the beginning, they were a mirror reflecting only your brightest light, your deepest capacity for love. It was euphoric. But as the connection deepens, the mirror becomes more precise, more honest, more ruthless. It begins to reflect back everything, not just your light, but the shadows you've been carrying too. The version of you that settled for less. The part of you that believed you had to earn love through sacrifice. The ancient ache of self-abandonment. And that feeling of disgust, you're not actually disgusted by him, not his core, beautiful soul. You are recoiling from the reflection of your own past tolerances that he is now showing you. His inconsistency holds up a mirror to your past willingness to wait for someone who wasn't ready. His emotional unavailability reflects your own history of closing off parts of yourself to seem more palatable. This is where it gets truly fascinating. This visceral, almost nauseating reaction is your soul's way of saying enough. It is a profound act of self-preservation. It's your spirit violently rejecting the old toxic patterns you are now outgrowing. It's not that you dislike him. You are developing a sacred allergy to the dynamics of lack, limitation, and self-betrayal that his behavior is triggering within you. This is the universe's intense, loving, and merciful way of forcing you to establish boundaries, to reclaim your sovereignty, and to choose yourself so unequivocally that any future reunion can only be built on the solid ground of wholeness, rather than the shifting sands of neediness. This phase is the ultimate spiritual purge. It's the emotional equivalent of a high fever, uncomfortable, even frightening, but a clear sign that your body is fighting off an infection. Your soul is burning away the illusions. You are detoxing from the fantasy of who you thought he was or who you needed him to be, and coming to terms with the reality of who he is, and more importantly, who you are becoming in this process. The dislike is the friction of your old self and your new self rubbing against each other. The old you who would have tolerated this, and the new you who simply, utterly, and completely cannot. And that beautiful soul is not a step backward. It is the most courageous leap forward you can take. And you know what the most ironic part of this entire purification process is? This very disgust that feels like a wall is actually preparing you for the purest, most neutral form of love imaginable. But that's a truth so liberating, it deserves its own conversation. Let's talk about the silence that follows the storm of disgust. That space where the intense frustration fades, but it doesn't magically turn into longing. It just becomes quiet, neutral. And if we're being honest, that neutrality can sometimes feel even scarier than the anger. The fear whispers, if the fiery emotions are gone, does that mean the connection is dead? Have I become indifferent? What if I told you that this neutrality is not the absence of love, but the very thing that makes real, unconditional love possible for the first time? This isn't a flat line, it's the sacred, fertile ground where you finally get to build a relationship with the most important person in this dynamic. You. Think about how this journey started. The intensity was off the charts, right? The highest highs, the lowest lows. Your entire emotional world seemed to orbit around him. His texts, his energy, his presence or absence. We often mistake that roller coaster, that obsessive need for their validation and attention, for the pinnacle of spiritual love. But let's call it what it often is. A form of spiritual addiction. It's the ego's frantic search for completion outside of itself. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, knows that a union built on this kind of desperate need would be a cage, not a liberation. So it uses this phase of disillusionment, this blessed dislike, to forcibly cut the cord of attachment. It's like a spiritual intervention. The withdrawal symptoms are brutal, I know. But on the other side of that withdrawal is a freedom you can't even imagine from where you're standing now. This neutrality is the universe's way of giving you your life back. Suddenly, you're not constantly consumed by thoughts of him. You stop analyzing every past interaction and agonizing over every future possibility. That mental and emotional energy, that massive amount of life force you were pouring into the idea of him, is now flowing back to you. And in that quiet, you finally hear it, your own soul's voice. You start to remember what you like to do for fun. You reconnect with friends. You dive into a project that lights you up. You begin to generate your own joy, your own validation, your own sense of purpose. You are no longer a half seeking its other half. You are becoming a sovereign, complete being. This is the alchemy. The dislike wasn't about pushing him away. It was about stopping the chase so you could finally turn around and come home to yourself. And here's the beautiful, ironic secret that the soul knows, but the ego fears. This state of wholeness and neutrality is the most magnetic force in the universe. A relationship born from two complete beings choosing each other is infinitely more powerful and lasting than one born from two halves desperately clinging to each other to feel whole. From this place, you are no longer reacting from a place of neediness or fear. You can respond from a place of clarity and choice. You can set boundaries not as punishments, but as acts of profound self-respect. You can see him not as a savior or a villain, but simply as a human being on his own path. This is where true, unconditional love becomes possible, because it's a love you are first giving to yourself. The connection can then transform from a source of agony into a source of peace. The silence isn't empty, it's full of your own becoming. And the most fascinating part? This whole messy, painful process is secretly rewriting the energetic rules of your connection in a way that makes a healthy, sustainable union not just a possibility, but an inevitability. But that's a revelation for another day. So here you stand, in the quiet aftermath of what you called dislike, in the spacious neutrality that you mistook for indifference. It's tempting to frame this entire journey as a battle, isn't it? A struggle between your heart and your mind, between devotion and self-preservation. But what if I told you that this was never a war? This was a homecoming. The frustration, the recoil, the sacred disgust. It was never about pushing him away. It was about a far more profound and terrifying invitation. The call to finally, fully, and irrevocably turn towards yourself. This feeling you've been navigating isn't the erosion of love. It is the erosion of the conditions you placed on love. You are not falling out of love. You are falling out of alignment with everything love is not. You were shedding the layers of expectation, the fantasy of rescue, the silent agreements you made with yourself that your peace was dependent on his presence, his choices, his awakening. This purge was the most courageous act of self-honesty you could have undertaken. It was your spirit refusing to betray itself any longer for the comforting lie of a half-lived connection. You chose the aching truth of solitude over the comfortable illusion of a counterfeit union. And in doing so, you did not break the bond. You upgraded its very foundation from one of need to one of conscious choice. Now, from this place of quiet sovereignty, something new can begin to breathe. The relationship is no longer a source of your suffering, because you are no longer sourcing your worth from it. You have become the sun, not the planet in orbit. You radiate from your own center. And this changes everything. When you meet again, and in some form, you always do, it will not be as two hungry halves seeking completion. It will be as two whole universes, choosing to weave their galaxies together, not out of lack, but out of breathtaking, overflowing abundance. The connection transforms from a question into an answer, a quiet, steady yes to the truth you've built within yourself. You will no longer need to like or dislike him, for you will finally see him clearly, a beautiful, flawed human on his own path, worthy of love not because he completes you, but simply because he is, and you are worthy of receiving that same grace. This journey was never about finding a missing piece. It was about realizing you were never broken to begin with. The dislike was the friction of your wholeness rubbing against the old story of your lack. You are not losing love. You are returning to love's original source, you. And from that unshakable ground, you will love and be loved, not because you need to be, but because you cannot help but shine. And the world and he will have no choice but to see you in your glorious, sovereign light. And the most beautiful part of this entire transformation, the very qualities you had to cultivate within yourself, the boundaries, the self-respect, the independent joy, are the very things that create the only environment where a true, healthy, divine union can finally take root and forever flourish. But that is the beginning of a new story, one you are now more than ready to write.